All right, we're on, mate. Ash Delaney, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We've been having a long chat before the camera started rolling, but mate, it's good to finally catch up with you. I've been super impressed with the work that you've been doing for a number of years now from a distance, and I've wanted to talk to you forever. And we just finally found the right time the day before Christmas in Australia. So thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a long time coming. I know you're trying to reach out a couple of times, and I was
Yeah.
I was a bit slack getting back to you. Well,
No, it's
good.
all
We're
right.
here now. We're here.
That's all right. That's all right, mate. For those that don't know you, where are you located, and how'd you get there?
Yeah, I'm on St Andrews on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, Queensland. Um, I moved here about 4 years ago from Melbourne, uh, and that's when uh, started. I've been coaching for the last 8 years. I was a swimmer myself, but yeah, moved into coaching the last 8 years, and things have been sort of progressing from there. So, now up on the Sunshine Coast, going really well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, your swim career, tell us about that. It was super successful, world-class athlete, but tell us just generally, about your career and how it ended, and how you kind of transitioned into coaching from that.
Yeah, so I was a backstroker, dabbled a little bit in freestyle, but yeah, made my first team in 2006, and then went to the Beijing Olympics, Commonwealth Games, I think 4 or 5 World Championships. So over the span of about 10 years.
Mm.
2016, I missed the what was that? Rio, missed Rio. Got third at the trials, and then but was ready to hang up the togs then. So then, yeah, started coaching. I'd always planned to get into coaching, so I was pretty lucky because while I was on the Australian team, I was learning from coaches, asking them questions, and trying to put things together myself because just try and gather more experience because I couldn't do a lot of coaching while I was still swimming myself. So I thought it was a great opportunity to learn from some pretty amazing coaches that were on the Australian team at the time. And then lucky enough to have, I had Rowan Taylor as one of my coaches, Shannon Rollison and Vince Rayleigh. So I got to learn a lot from them. And then knew I wanted to go in coaching probably about halfway through my career when I was about 24, 25. Started learning a bit more, and then, yeah, transitioned to coaching. Once I missed that Olympic team, it was pretty much go to the Olympics and retire, or miss the team and start coaching. So either way, it was only going to be a space of about 3 months that I was still going to swim for, but I was ready to go into coaching at that stage then. So yeah, kicked it all off.
Mate, we sound like we're very similar in terms of the way we went through our careers, the way we got into coaching, and kind of some of the mentors we had, the elite level coaches that have been. And then I get the sense that you and I are similar in terms of our coaching styles and our personalities, maybe when it comes to coaching. So we'll learn more as this podcast goes on, but that's the sense I get. But was there any words of wisdom that those particular coaches gave you at the start of your journey that you might be able to share with some young coaches? Like, how did you establish what type of coach you were going to be? How did you establish how you would write workouts? All that stuff at the beginning that is kind of questionable when you're first starting. Was there advice that those guys gave you in the beginning?
Yeah, so I not necessarily advice, probably Rowan Taylor the most because he was my coach right before I finished, and so we would chat, and I would ask him like obviously, I couldn't do breaststroke myself, but he had Liesl Jones win Olympic gold medal, so it was a perfect opportunity for me to ask questions and sit in with him on certain meetings that they were doing or talking about different things. So I got just opportunity to learn, but all three coaches have all coached an Olympic gold medalists that I had, and there were some amazing. They all had amazing traits to what the way they coach, and they're also different as well. So I tried to take those best things that I learned from them, not necessarily words they gave me specifically, but just the way that they did things and operated. There's a reason why they got to the level they did was because they were doing those really good things. Like Shannon was a meticulous planner and really just attention to detail. Vince would have that bigger picture, and he could see 3-4 years into the future on the way that he would plan and set it all up. And and then Rowan he just brought in people that were the best in their field, and you'd be able to learn from them, and he'd facilitate that environment that just produced good swimmers. So I sort of tried to mimic a few of those things. I was obviously in there doing it as a swimmer, so I sort of felt and saw what they were doing. So that was sort of what I tried to grasp onto coming in as a coach. Then when I first started, it was probably more, I was coaching more the way that I wanted to swim. So I was like, okay, well, I had my own ideas. Like I retired when I was 30. And so I had my own ideas, and I loved swimming. I'd seen what other people were doing all around Australia and around the world a little bit as well, like traveling to World Cups and just chatting to people, plugging ideas from them. And then so that sort of started my career, and it was the way that I guess I wanted to work, or the distance I thought I needed to. And then that started to evolve as I've got, well, it's evolved a lot, even in the last probably 4 or 5 years, that my group turned from an age group program into more of an open program. And it's just become a lot more individualized. So that was a transition I knew I had to make, and quickly, because you got people like Isaac that are just pure sprint. They can't do what everyone else does. They can do special things themselves. Then again, coming from an age group program, someone that might have been doing the 200 would still then go and do the 50, and everyone was sort of grouped in together. So it started to specialize a lot more. Now I can have, for main set days, could probably have 4 or 5 sessions running at certain stages. But then sometimes people fit in together, then I might only be 1 or 2 going. So just depends on the day where we're at in the block. And it sort of really started to edge towards that, where just giving people what they need.
Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. And there's not a lot of different opportunities in Australia to kind of go down a different path. In America, you got a couple of different options. You go club swimming, you can go college coaching, those sorts of things. In Australia, it's very club oriented. So tell us about your club. How's it set up? You said you transitioned a little bit from more of the juniors to kind of the senior. So how's it set up, and what's the operation these days, and who's it supported by?
Yeah, so I am employed by St Andrew's Anglican College. So we're a school program, but the leaders of our school saw, basically the vision of the school is, if you have performance at the top, it does drive the participation. So they understood they wanted someone to create a performance program at the top. And then that filters all the way through. So we actually have a pathway from learn to swim all the way up to high performance. Obviously got 2 people on the Olympic team, and then two people on the Paralympic team. So all of that drive together, where we've got, the structure is basically junior development squad, junior competition squad, state squad, national squad, and then my performance squad. So that's kind of the structure where but then everything's underpinned by the learn to swim. We've got a separate learn to swim pool, doing about 1,000 lessons a week. So and we get really good juniors coming through from there. So it's sort of the model of, producing them yourselves, attracting people over, and then retaining them. So that's kind of what we're sort of basing it off. It's been working really well. Numbers have grown insane in the last 4 years, and the club's gone from, I think we weren't even in the top 30 in the state, and then we've entered into the top 10 at open level, at nationals, and in the state. So it's just really starting to produce. Still a bit to go though.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, mate. That sounds brilliant. I got to get down there and visit sometime. Sounds like you're doing a great job. You started working with Isaac Cooper when look, when I talk to Isaac about you, he just says, I've got a partner, who is more than a swim coach for me. Like, it's really important for Isaac to have somebody in his life that is there in many different facets and different aspects. And it sounds like he's found that in you. Absolutely. Like, he just trusts you so much. He believes in you so much, and you've had some phenomenal results. Now, knowing Isaac from the outside looking in, like, he wouldn't be an easy guy to manage either. So you're doing some good work there. But he's got a beautiful heart, but he's a sprinter. He's an artist in a way, and he's definitely difficult to manage. But how'd that come about, and how's it developed over the past few years?
Well, it sort of came about from, I mean, not a good situation, because Isaac was kicked off the Commonwealth Games team, and then he was looking for a new coach, and I just happened to have Kyle training with me at the time, and basically Isaac asked Kyle if he could come up and train for a week or two. And so he came up, and his intentions were coming up to the Sunshine Coast, or moving up to the Sunshine Coast, but then swimming for another club. And then Kyle was like, well, why don't you come and trial with Ash? And then in the end, liked it. We kind of gelled. And I think while we gel as well, like, I like to collaborate with the swimmers as well. Like, you would know as well, Brett, that like, you've got your own ideas. It's your body. It's your career. Like, you understand your body, your makeup, you want to try things. And if one coach is just always dictating all the time, then eventually you're sort of going, well, I don't feel it's kind of right for me. And you get people leave. People do leave. But then I like to actually, if you've got ideas, I want to hear them. I want to work with you. And that's kind of what I did with Isaac. And we sort of changed a couple of things around. Obviously, if I feel that it's not right, then we go, well, no, maybe we can adjust this, or the science doesn't really support that, or whatever it is. And then go, well, yeah, I'm more than happy to work with the swimmer on that if they want to look at something. So even that goes with the other guys that I coach as well. They're looking at, if I have an idea, or if they have an idea and want to trial something, then we sort of go, or if they have an idea and it's like, well, your makeup doesn't really suggest that, like you're more of a mid-distance swimmer, you're not really going to make it in the 50. Like, it's like, well, you probably be doing the wrong type of training for your body if you want to do that. So, and then as long as it's sort of plead the case, then it sort of works out all right. But going back to Isaac, he's a bit of a firecracker, but we get along. We've built good trust, and we just work well together. So he keeps it very exciting and interesting. But I sort of stepped in as like a bit more of a mentor, big brother, I think, at the start, because it was like, well, you got to remember, you might be going away and having a bit of fun, but it's not about that. You're a professional. You want to actually go and achieve the things that you want to achieve. To be doing silly things along the way is not right. So when you go overseas, or when you go away for a trip, you just got to remember it's business, So that was my advice to him. And then, that's sort of what we've been working on since.
You've done a good job pulling him in, because it seems like he's got himself on track, and it did seem like he was kind of floating in the wind a little bit. And to have someone who can rein him in and get the best out of him at times is super important. One of the things that really interests me about your relationship and the work that you're doing is, we're seeing a lot of older athletes say, my career didn't feel right. I went through the normal track, the regular run, and I want to try something different. I want to, I'm on my third Olympics. I've been to a bunch of world championships. I'm creeping up on 30, or I'm in my mid 30s, whatever it is. We're seeing guys like this say, I'm going to try something different, and they're going faster. It's unusual for a younger athlete who hasn't had that type of career yet to make that decision to say, hey, I want to try something out of the box. I want to go shorter. I want to go faster. I want to compete to be the fastest man on earth. Most of these athletes are 29, 30, 31, 32, making that decision. He's young, 22 years old.
He's only 20.
He's only 20? Oh, God, he's only 20. Jeez, he's even younger than I thought. But
it's crazy.
It seems like you're making that decision. How did you come to that conclusion that was you were ready to do that at that age?
Yeah, well, so Isaac hates the 100. He hates the pain that comes with it, and he hates the work that he has to do to it. But he's so good at it, and so I pushed the 100. He was pushing back against it, but he saw it as the way of making that Olympic team as well. So we sort of hedged our bets a little bit for the Olympic team, but I still thought if he was truly in it, I thought he could go 51 high, maybe 52 low for that 100 back, and we weren't too far off that. when he sort of first came in. But the more he just gravitated more and more to the 50s, and he started to resent the 100, and he was always, as a young age group, he was Isaac Cooper, the backstroker, Isaac Cooper, the 100 backstroker. That's what he was known as. So it started to get this trigger for him that he didn't like it that much, but he felt compelled that he had to keep doing it. And then, like I said, we targeted the 50 free and the 100 backstroke in the lead up into the Olympics, but we just did enough to make the 100 good, but we're kind of trying to trend more to the 50. And then, but just in the whole lead up to that, he just, again, resenting it, didn't want to do it. And then we kind of got to the point where it was like, well, we went to the Doha World Championship, swum 350s, world champion in the 50 back, finalist for the free and the fly. And it was just, I could sort of see how happy he was racing those 3 races. And he's elite at all 3 of them. And it was like, well, this can completely change the way your pathway in this sport could be, because you actually enjoy it. You enjoy training for those. And you can race at those 3 competitions, at every competition except for the Olympics. And then when the news came out after the Olympics that potentially those 50s in, it can change his career again at an Olympic level. So I think once we got through the Olympics and he finished that 100 back, he was dead set on finishing the 100 back. Like, that was it. Maybe still do it short course, which he is doing. But again, you can just see him gravitate to those 50s, and it just makes sense, because otherwise we're going to lose him from the sport. If it wasn't do the 50 training, he didn't really enjoy the other training. And so you don't do something you don't like. You don't like doing, do you? So you've got to be passionate about it. You've got to enjoy it. And then he's trying to achieve those goals. He can set new goals for those 50s, and then we can just kick it off like that. So, and he's just been world apart, and he's enjoying it. He's loving it. He's found his good place. And yeah, we're trialing different things, doing different things, speaking to different coaches, learning, developing. Like, it's been good.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. It's better to have him in the sport than out, right? And if he's doing something that makes him happy, then who are we to say otherwise? Michael Andrew cops a lot of stuff for what people think he should be and what people think he should do, and it's like, let Michael Andrew do whatever he wants to do. It's his career.
Absolutely.
If he's in the sport, he's happy. Let him do it, and that's what I feel about Isaac. He's a great personality to have. I'd imagine he'd be a good teammate too. What is it specifically about how do you train for a 50 these days, right? Like, from your perspective, 50 is becoming a legitimate, true event. It was never a true, legitimate event for many years. Now it's one that, what I mean by that is, people are specifically training for it. They're selecting that as their event that they want to go and try and win, like Cam has done, right?
Yeah.
And now other people are saying, well, the only way I'm going to beat Cam is if I get specific and I aim for that, and I stop trying to figure out how to swim 100 and just try and figure out how to swim as fast as possible. So what are some of the things you're doing that are different, that are specific for the 50 in terms of your training? If you can share some of that.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing we looked at is gym. So we got amazing results we did a massive strength block at the start of the 2022 season. And I had a massive shift in all my guys. And that included the 100 as well. So that made me started to look at the gym and what's right for certain athletes. And because we spoke about it earlier, but you talk about some of the drag components on putting on extra muscle. But then I look at it, well, the strength, actually, you can only apply so much pressure to the water, but at the same time, if your capacity is to get out a little bit faster because you're stronger, you're going to actually have more in the back end as well. So if you're going out at 80% instead of 90% because you're only using less strength, this is the way I've started to think about it, then you've still got the back end to come home. Because as an example, I had one of my swimmers, 100 flyer. We went through this strength block, and he put on a lot of size, and they were swimming. The group was swimming incredibly fast. This was early on in the season, but I dropped back the Ks because I was really trying to polarize it to go, well, I want to put on muscle. The physios that we spoke to, they were like, your group's too skinny. You need to put on more muscle. So as a group, we set that up, and they got stronger. And then they started swimming faster training. And then we were coming up to state championships, but that's early part in the season for us. And I'm coming in going, oh, they're not fit enough. They're not going to be able to do it. They're not going to have the back ends. Yes, they're swimming fast in training, but that's just 50s. And we just spent a lot of time doing that. And got to the state championships. One guy dropped from 54.3 to 52.9 for the 100 butterfly, and just blew me away. And the group had massive drops in all their times, like their 50s, 100s. These were 50 and 100 meter swimmers. And for me, I was just like, oh, okay. Like it was kind of, and then I had to start working it out. Why did that happen? And they were just getting out faster, but they were doing it easier. They were swimming easy, like they had easy speed. And then they still had something to come back with, even though we hadn't done the work that I thought that we needed to do. And that's when I sort of started really looking at the gym. And so we started to shift different things, and then we started building more and more strength. And then again, we spoke about earlier, I feel it's harder to put on weight. So then when you get that strength and you've got the muscle there, then you can make changes. If you need to trim down a little bit, then you can. But once you're in hard work in the pool, it's very hard to put on any strength or size in the gym. So I like to build it up at the start of the season, the strength component, and then make any adjustments if I feel someone needs to actually shred down a little bit, or the aerobic just isn't quite enough, then I can actually bring that back up, but at least have something to play with what we started with at the start of the season. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because I've been having these conversations with my assistant the past couple of days, and just, I'm coaching younger kids that I have never really coached before. I'm talking about 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And we just went through the first half of the season. We had speed. We were doing a lot of good training, good speed training, and we had a lot of speed. We just it ultimately came down to just we weren't strong enough. Like, we haven't been doing gym. We've been doing some resistance work in the pool, and that's been helping us get stronger and faster. But we're ultimately just not strong because we're not doing any gym. So like we're having these conversations of like, we've got to get stronger. We've got to get stronger. So yeah, it's interesting how that really relates to speed, doesn't it?
I also brought in some of that resistance training as well. Like, we were using power racks and then the green bungees. But what I say at Olympic trials, there was a few people over swimming some of their races, and we'd actually spent a lot of time on the pulleys, on the bungees. And what I've now shifted to this part of the season, because they were stronger, but it was almost teaching them the wrong way. So this season we've already started. We had pretty good state championships, but I'm looking for their efficiency on those power racks. So how much stroke length do they have? Because you can actually get a faster time. We still time and record it all, and with stroke rate, stroke count. But then we were over swimming, and we could get a faster time by doing that. But then when you actually come to the race pool, you're setting it up all wrong. So now we've gone back to, yes, we're still using those, but I'm making sure the stroke count is almost coming first over stroke rate, and making sure, can you get a faster time with less strokes, is basically the model. We're still trying to go fast, but I don't want to see a max effort where you're just spinning. And then creating that stroke length. So you're actually building strength all the way through the stroke from top to bottom. And I've found that we're starting to now it's just setting them up so much better for racing. So yeah, something that I've sort of changed, if you want to have a look at that as well. I think it's been very valuable for me. So
beautiful. Nate, clip that, bang. Nate goes through my podcast and gets the best clips, and that's a good one, because look, it's learnings, right? You've gone through a whole season, and now you're adjusting based on your learnings, and you don't want the coaches that listen to this to have to make those mistakes and then readjust later. So it's like, learn from that. Yeah, I think it's great advice too. I've actually learned similar things myself with that. Like, I found that the best seasons I had with my sprinters was when they were holding really good length. It wasn't about necessarily the the tempo and the pace that they were going at, the way they were attacking, it was just like sitting up high in the water and being able to hold that for long periods of time, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's good.
What's up? This is Nate from SwimNerd. Just letting you guys know about SwimNerd timing. We now offer the most affordable, the easiest to use timing system in the world. We got it all. Starters, harnesses, buttons, touchpads, scoreboards, your one-stop shop for all your timing needs. Check us out at swimpractice.com.
I saw a clip on YouTube, which I thought was brilliant. And I reposted it and got everybody that I could to try and have a look at it. It was you talking about freestyle. Was that on what podcast was that?
Effortless swimming.
Effortless,
With
right?
Brendan
So
Ford,
yeah, Brendan Ford, effortless swimming. So go find that clip on freestyle. So I'm not going to tap into that. I'm going to tap into something a little different. I want your brain on backstroke. Help me with backstroke. So give me that same type of breakdown that you had on your freestyle on that effortless swimming clip, and give me something similar on backstroke. Teach me world-class backstroke, my friend.
Okay. First thing I'll look at is always body position, head position. So it's how you're sitting in the water. There's been, I mean, when I look at it, I talk about, so you almost just want this part of your face out of the water. So if you're up too high, you got the risk of bringing your hips are going to sink down. But it should be back far enough, but not opening back. You almost want to like tuck this chin there. And then I like to lean on your shoulders, because that's then just sitting that body position up, but keeping the hips up. These are your hips, by the way. And then a nice tight kick. So that's sort of where I start with them. Something that Isaac does incredibly well and better than anyone else. And it's why we think he's got so much speed, that raw speed, because it's the last finish part of his stroke. And that's something that I actually learned from him. And same Ryan, our biomechanist, when we're looking at it, we're looking at underwater footage, the way that he finishes to his hip, that was incredible. So that's what I've started to look for. And I wish I had have known that in my swimming career, because we weren't doing that. And I was very good at the catch at the top, but then out to the side. So we would go a little bit wider, but the way that he sort of brings that elbow in, I don't know if you can't see me, but brings that elbow in and then finishes through to his hip. It's
do us a favor. Can you stand up and just show us that? Because I think that's really, really valuable. Yeah.
So
that works. Mm-hmm.
The way that he holds water from here, but he actually keeps holding with his forearm, and then he gets his hip up that way. And the way that for me, we were taught out wide, and then we were sweeping on the way up, and you start to get this fault leading with the shoulder, and you lose that last part of the catch, where he's so good at that last part of the catch, and he just keeps driving on each side. And so what we did was start getting better at that top, so more sculling and trying to get into that position, so you can start to get into that high elbow catch for backstroke. So that's sort of what I'm looking at for the catch. Like you go fingertips to the side, should be facing the bottom of the pool, so either side of the pool. So when you're actually getting that travel, you've got all the big paddle through there. Kick wise, obviously nice and tight, and just fitting in with the tempo. And then that's got to all match up. I think your catch, your hips. One of the other big things, I'll show you again, is when they're actually applying pressure from out here, that you don't get this hip sway side to side. Like that's another important one. You want to make sure all the core's on. You're applying pressure through here. You've got your power chain. And then as this hip comes up, like you're actually getting through there, and it's not sitting out to the side, and then you have to shorten up your catch out the back there. And so it turns into a bit more of a snaking movement versus actually rotating in the same line, and then got this big power chain and actually utilizing the back part of the catch. I think that's the big thing that we're working on, and that are what I keep looking for.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. In freestyle, there's obviously the high elbow catch like there is in backstroke, but there are freestylers now who are coming over the top with a much straighter arm, driving the hand down, catching water through kind of like the under the armpit all the way through, making this just one giant paddle, kind of driving the fingertips down. Is there anything similar in backstroke? Like you're talking about getting on a catch here with a high elbow, but is there anyone driving down on a kind of on a more of a straight arm backstroke?
I haven't seen that. I think if you get too deep at the top, like you sort of lose that power. So it seems to be people getting onto it and then coming out to the side here, and they seem to. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. So, but there are good people that are super flexible. You see Camille Lacour, like he's right at the top, and then he's got this like right angle up here.
I think Kayla McEwen is very similar to that. Like, she's got crazy flexibility back there.
Yeah. And I think that is the mobility of the shoulders. So, but again, it comes down to the individual, right? Like if they don't have the mobility in the shoulder or they're thoracic, they're not quite getting into the same position that someone can way up the top. But then their other strength might be that they can finish at the bottom really well. So just tweaking those little things that you've got to look at. What's your athlete? What's their makeup? What's their detail? And then start to try and fix their model. But again, probably the body position one is going to be the most, like you talk about stroke models, you've got to look at that first, always comes first. And then you can start playing around with top catch, bottom catch, rotation, how that all sort of fits in. So that's kind of the way I sort of try and piece it together.
Again, in freestyle, there's as they swim faster, the hips are staying flatter. They're getting more rotation through the upper thoracic, through the core, and shoulders, but the hips seem to stay flatter. Is it similar in backstroke when they go faster? The hips are flattening out.
Yeah, you want them. I sort of talk about you want the feeling of them being tight, but they're still going to move side to side with the hip, with the shoulders, but it's just not going to be as much. I like to talk about holding your core on, like you're sucking your belly button into your core and holding that on. And then that keeps them a little bit more rigid. But at the same time, when you do finish your stroke, you're wanting to get it up. You're getting that, if your right hand's catching, you want to get your right hip up on the finish because that then allows the left side to actually enter in. So you're looking for the connection of the stroke with the hips. I like to lead from the hips. And then because then that's going to it's going to stop overreaching because you want all your core to be aligned and your hips and your shoulders. So that's all in sync. That's the coordination. And then the arms are external. They're not the ones leading it. You want the core to be leading it. So then it's your right hip that's coming up, which means your left shoulder's coming down. And then that starts to connect everything up so that you're actually driving in, connected, and synchronized, basically.
Right. What about the legs, the kick? Where are you kicking from? And what are the legs doing? I see some people in backstroke, they have crossover. Some people stay in a tight box and their feet never really cross over. But like where are you initiating the kick from, and what are you doing with your feet as you're traveling side to side?
I like the tight box where it's just you're just using it on rhythm. It's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You're kind of just balancing from side to side. Oh man, my backstroke kick sucked. If you ever look at some old videos, I've got this big drop knee that would drop right down. It was way too big. It was like this big anchor that just slowed me down. So I love it when I see the backstrokers in the nice little tight box because I couldn't do it. I don't know about the coordination or what. I just sucked at it. So, so I teach that, like that, trying to be nice and tight because I think it's same as freestyle. It's not doing much propulsion, but it's connecting the stroke the whole time. As soon as you lose your legs, your whole race is gone. I think that's nearly for any stroke. But the way backstrokers need to keep it nice and tight, and it's just supporting the arms. It's not the dominant force.
Are you thinking about kicking from the top of the hip or the feet? Like what's the action?
I think the top of the hip, because then you're eliminating the knee bend, where I was just so quad dominant that I was trying to use my quads too much, and then I'd just blow up. Plus, then it would then create even more drag. So I talk about from the hip, pointed toes, and then that way it's just coming back and forward with only slight knee bend, and then that keeps it nice and tight.
Are you doing flexibility work with their feet to get their ankles looser, more flexible at all?
Yeah, like just sitting on your ankles. So like
Mm,
when you're bent knees and then you kind of rock back so that the feet are almost like
mm,
that. I remember
mm,
seeing Arcades, the Russian backstroker. This is early on in my career, and he was just doing so his feet were like this on the ground. He was just on a bar and just going up and down on the bar, and it was like, and I'd never seen anything like that before. But ankle flexibility, just to have that flexion of your ankles, I think is really helps hold the water better.
little
Some people have
Russian
that naturally
exercise.
though. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, again, like Kaylee McEwen, I've seen her feet are just like they just fall. It's like I wouldn't
Yeah.
imagine she's the best runner on earth, but she's definitely the best swimmer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good lesson. I like that. I like that a lot. What about in terms of recovery or even tempo? Are you thinking from the shoulders, or are you thinking hand speed? Like, how do you want them to think about getting their hand through their arms through recovery?
Well, I think as you exit the water, like there is a bit of an acceleration in the last part of the catch, but then it also needs to be long and relaxed as you come through. And then that's allowing everything to sync up, and then it actually then drives into the other side. So I try and talk about all the matching up. So it should be slow in the recovery at the start and accelerate through, because that then matching up when it accelerates in, that catch is slower at the start and accelerates through the catch. So it's sort of like it's trying to match up both sides, but I still like it led from the core, because that's allowing everything, but then matching up with the catch, slow at the start, getting onto the water, building through the catch and accelerating through. So that's sort of the way that I sort of try and I think freestyle is very similar. Freestyle is very similar. That it's a nice relaxed recovery at the start,
Right.
and then you do accelerate into the next stroke. But then that matches up with when you're out in front and you catch, you accelerate through to the back as well. And it
Yeah,
all
it's
starts to
interesting.
sink
It's
in.
interesting how you're doing opposites, isn't it? It's like there's an acceleration out front, there's a relaxation out back, there's a little bit of tension on your catch. It's
Yeah,
like you complete opposites. So I always talk about that too with my athletes. Is like you don't want one side to be doing exactly what the other side's doing, but you want it to be in rhythm
yeah,
and connected to each other, but they're doing opposite things at the same time.
yeah. Because there's getting length out in front. The backstroke's the same. You're getting
Sure.
length out in front, freestyle out in front. While this part's gliding, this other one has to be nice and slow and relaxed to give it time. Otherwise, you start seeing people get into that three-quarter catch up,
Yeah.
and then all their timings out, shocking swimming. So
Yeah.
um, and then they're stuck at that pace. So obviously that's a bit more sprint model anyway, but this is the sprint revolution, isn't it?
It
Um,
is. It is.
so yeah, you've got to still get that glide. So I think
Mm.
that's part of the stroke.
How do you work on tempo? Do you use tempo trainers? What's the best way for you to get tempo in practice?
Yeah, I do like metronomes, but majority of my guys don't like them. I don't know why. I love them as an athlete, just for
Mm,
it to just simplify it and make it just obviously just the tempo keep ticking over. But then we bring them in, we bring them out, and then I like them to gather the feel. So a lot of the time, if we're doing 100 pace, it's like, well, I want 100 pace here. Um, and then I'll get their rate. And then over time, we've got some stroke models, race models that we use. Then getting their rate. Okay, what was that? What was your rate? What was your count? And then we kind of start to get, and then what was the time? Then we're starting to get a lot of information to go, okay, yep, all right, that's the feel that I want you feeling when you're actually racing, because you're not going to have that when you race anyway. So we do a bit like that. Or then the other thing is I actually ask them, and something I picked up from Kyle was you ask what your rate was and what the time was. So then they're actually getting a good understanding of what that feel is, and then they're telling you what it is and seeing if they can get it right. So they're actually going, well, that's what it felt like. This is what I'm saying, not trying to guess or say what they think that it is. And then it gives them a bit better understanding. I've got someone guess the exact stroke rate to the point, and then in a dive 25, got the exact 100th as well, or in the same one. So the
wow.
same rate, perfect. And then, but I've never. That's only one. I've only ever done that
Wow,
once.
it's
It's an exciting
epic
day.
when that happens. Yeah, it's good when that happens, isn't it? Yeah. But isn't it? It's like I used to be able to get my lactate like that, like to the point,
Yeah.
and then I could get my heart rate to the beat. Like once you start to do this often enough and long enough, and you start to ask questions about it, you really start to understand your body, like down to the very fine details, don't you? And that's when you've got a real athlete. I imagine Kyle
Absolutely.
Chalmers has a very, very clear understanding of his capabilities and what his body is doing, right?
Oh, he can nail it. Like doing the stroke rate and time. Like he's very rarely is he outside 0.1, you know, like, and
Mm.
he just knows, he knows the feel exactly what he wants to do. And then he's just executing. So I think when you know your body like that as an athlete, and then the coach, you can start to have those performance conversations where it becomes more about how we improving the performance versus then just, I don't know, having shots at the dark sort of thing. So just a lot
Yeah.
more targeted. It's really good. And any
Yeah.
athlete out there learning their body, taking
Mm.
ownership, I think that's what coaches want to see, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
You're taking it all on board. They are your goals. We're just here to facilitate them.
Right. You want to swim faster? You need Sprint Revolution resistance equipment. This isn't just gear, it's a game changer. Our propellers, power socks, stretch cords, parachutes, and paddles are all designed to build explosive speed and power in the water. If you're serious about taking your swim to the next level, you need the best resistance gear out there. Sprint Revolution, where speed is born. Talk to us about Kyle Chalmers. Kyle's going down as potentially one of the greatest freestylers in history, certainly in Australia, up there with Ian Thorpe in the conversation as one of the greatest ever, right? Like talk to us about your relationship with him and what type of athlete he is.
Yeah, so we first met in 2015. So it was his first team was my last team, and I made the 4x1 freestyle team that year, and we didn't go that well, but that's where our friendship kicked off because I was pretty much finished day one, and they ended up putting Carl in the medley relay in the heats where he still went like 47. He's a 17-year-old going 47.5 or something like that. A fly start, but it was pretty awesome. But we just trained together all week because I was going on to the World Cups afterwards. So we just became friends off the back of that. I was 30 and he was 17. So there was, is that right? Yeah, I think that was right. No. So it was 2015. I must have been 19. So there's a bit of an age gap. But then, I'd finished, started coaching, and then we'd always keep in contact. He was in Adelaide. I was in Melbourne at the time. And so we've just, always stayed in contact through that time. And then it was around, I'd moved up to the Sunshine Coast, and then he was just in Adelaide and looking for something, to go on a couple of camps and different things just to get Adelaide, I think maybe in the winter. And then sort of just reached out and he was like, oh, I'm going to come up for a few weeks and just train with you. So in the end, chatted to Bish, and we organised what he needed to do, and he just needed to get out of Adelaide. So he came up and started doing camps with us. And then, and then basically all stuff happened in Adelaide out of his control. And then so he just I was in contact with him the whole time and all the whole situation going on. And then, he decided he wanted to move up, and but it was all 3 or 4 months before the Olympics. So it was just, I mean, you wouldn't recommend it for anyone to make any sort of changes like that in the lead up. So it was a difficult situation, but I just wanted to make sure everything was right for him. So he basically had to make that change, and I wanted everything to just be completely normal. We didn't want to make any changes. I'd seen all his programs in the lead up to all other competitions. And so I had good understanding of what he was doing. And so I just needed him to keep doing what he was doing I didn't want to screw anything up for him, like he's obviously it's past now and he's on the podium. So that's three Olympics in a row. So he was kind of going for something pretty special. So a lot of definitely pressure, but because of our close friendship, it just was easy, you know, like I have no problem with, for me, he's just still that 17-year-old mate that I have. And I've got no problem with calling him out or saying you need to do this or start doing this, but he's a professional athlete. So there wasn't too much of that going on, but I think he just likes that. It was just real. So our friendships never changed. So it doesn't matter if he's won gold medals or no gold medals. It's a friendship first. So we've always just got along, and we've been friends since for that many years. So it was quite a journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's good. It's good that you were there for him in that time, especially like that close to the Olympics and having to make a shift like that. You want, like you said, you want everything just to be, as normal as possible. And you guys handled that super well. I mean, obviously Kyle finishes second at the Olympics and gets beat by someone who has to break a world record to beat him, and swim some phenomenal time. So, it was legit that he earned his medal, and you guys did awesome there. But did you go to Paris with him? Were you in Paris?
I went to the staging camp. I was all the way up until they went into the village, and then I came back to Australia after that.
So what's he like? Like, how do you know he's on? Like a guy like that, what does he like to do in the lead up to a big competition like that, without giving too much away, but just some basic things that that Kyle loves to do this type of work, makes him feel good, and then when you see it and he's getting closer to the event, he's on. He's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, the way that he just comes in, he's got a standard that, it's just elite, like the expectation that he's coming in with to any main set, he just brings it, and he brings it every single time. There is, I reckon we probably had one down session, but he was like in a little bit of adaptation at the time. Everything else was phenomenal. He's like super professional. He counts his strokes on every single 50. He's just spot on with his time. Everything he does, just the setup for it and the mental preparation is probably up there with all of the best. Like that's what they do really well. They just prepare so well, and they get themselves up for the main set. So he was just on this amazing warpath. Like, it was, the times that he was doing was incredible. His counts, he was just getting faster and faster as well, and holding the same stroke counts. It was just really good. And then one Friday, he laid on the couch too long, and he actually tweaked his back. And we just dealt with that that was a week before trials. And I don't know how many people know this. I'm not sure if he mentioned, I think he's mentioned it out there, but I don't know how much it's actually come out. But he had 4 cortisones in his back a week before trials. And then we wanted to keep that quiet because it was just obviously a few people knew, but he could barely do anything, and he barely did a start until I think it was the day before the first race. He was getting physio nearly every second day, trying to get that right, and he just laid on the couch wrong. He's just so finely tuned that just something like that can just tweak it. And then so he was dealing with a lot of mental stuff for that coming into trials, but how strong he was through that. And then not only that, he ended up, we actually laughed about this the other day, but he actually, the day of competition or of the 100 freestyle, he was sick as well. And then he was just doing these, clearing his throat. And I said, "Oh, are you okay?" And he didn't say, "Oh, no, I'm fine." And then he had the 100 freestyle, race the file, one to qualify for the Olympics. And then he was still coughing. And I actually said, "You're sick, aren't you?" And he just said, yeah, I'm sick. And he said, I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to put it out there until I'd finished. And he basically had finished racing then. Wow. And so he qualified. He just didn't want to give himself any excuses. So not only did his back go, he was also sick on at the meet on the day of the 100 freestyle for the trials. Just incredible. Wow. Yeah. But then dealing with all of his back in the lead up. So he had the cortisones. It was better, but it was just he had to tape it for the flight and all these things, and it was just it would come and go, and it never really settled down. It was a tough lead up where we had 3 months where he first moved over. First week was stressful, not tension, but it was just so much change, right? And then we basically, everything settled down and it was swimming well, doing everything really well. And then he just started killing it. And then it was right before trials, like that's where he tweaked his back. So it was like we had this amazing run in, and then just a couple things just sort of happened, not quite going our way, but still on the team and was all good. So we just need to get over to France.
Yeah, I get that sense from him too, and I don't know how to say this in a nice way without it sounding hard on him, but like I get the sense that he's a really nice guy out of the pool, and he's just a bully in the pool. Like you can't get one over him. Like he's just tough as nails. Like he's one of the fiercest competitors I've ever met. You can just see it. Like as soon as he's standing behind the blocks, he becomes this different animal, and I don't get the sense he's like that day in, day out. But like when something's on the line like that, especially 100 freestyle championship of the world, the Olympic championship, I get the sense that he just becomes this different animal. And it's like, man, he would be tough to race, I would imagine.
He is just a competitive beast. I've never met anyone more competitive than him. When he first started coming up, I would say to one, we'd just be doing maybe A1 swimming, but we might have been doing repeat 100s. And I was watching him, and he would just get his hand on the wall first every single time. And then one time I just said to one of the younger guys, "You've been equal with him. Just sprint the last 5 meters to beat him." And then when he sprinted and beat him, I called out the times and I started getting into him, and he couldn't look at me because he didn't want to lose. He didn't want to lose, and he lost that. It was just A1 swimming, and he couldn't look at me because he was infuriated that he lost that 100. It was just an easy swim. But then he, like I said, that's what drives him, that competition. He wants to win anything he does. And like we play, like he always comments like, I'm really good at just stupid games like table tennis or darts or something like that. And he knows that, and I beat him all the time in these sort of things. And he comments all the time, but I know it drives him insane that I'm beating him in these they're just stupid tasks, like throwing rubbish, scrunching up a piece of paper and throwing it into a rubbish bin. He would just he's so competitive. He wants to win that. Like that's just the drive he has.
Yeah, I imagine. When I first heard the news that he was coming up to you 4 months out, I actually had a lot of hope, and it turned out great. But my hope was that you were going to do a lot of top end speed work, because I guess the thing on him, like if you're doing the analysis of like how this swim's going to be swum. Yeah, Kyle's going to get out strong, but he's going to come home over the top. That's just the way he's always done it. And I thought like 4 months out, I'm like, okay, he's with Ash. Maybe they're going to work top speed, and Kyle's just going to get super fast and he's going to get out. Was there ever any kind of like talk of like executing the plan like that? Because ultimately Pan goes out in 22.2, and that's kind of where the race is these days. It's like we're seeing it at the top end. You got to get out super fast. Gone are the day where you can get out and 22.9 and swim over the top of someone, right? So that was kind of, I was hoping, I was like, man, Kyle's going to get out with speed. Was there talk of that?
I think he needed, with all the change that happened in his life at that time, he needed to know and trust the process, that what he has done has worked before. And I didn't want to get in the way of that, because that was still his ambitious preparation. And so if it was now after the Olympics and we're going into a preparation, I would have suggested this is what we can try. But I didn't want to. Again, it was sort of like lose for me. If I then did something different, it's like, well, you've just ruined Kyle Chalmers. If I do what he was doing, if I do what he was already doing, then that's their results anyway. And so that's where I was happy. I was settled with that, because I was like, well, I don't want to, like I said, you're my mate first, so I want to see you succeed. And so if you've been doing something for 12, 15 years and it's been working for you this whole time, I'm not going to change it now. And like I said, there's just too much change for him, and he needed to. Right. It's getting a new coach 4 months before the Olympics, right? Like, so the timing's different. The way that I'd speak would be different, but it was still like I looked at it and said, well, what improvements can I make? And we just looked at the easy ones, the skills. And in the end, the work that we did on the turn, because we wanted to be out. So like in Australia, we go 5 in, 10 out. And so the 10 out, we wanted that to be under 4.0. And so he had the fastest he'd ever done was 3.9, I think, on the way out. And that was something that we worked a lot on. And in the end, that was the difference between, I think his way out or his whole turn time was 0.2 faster than anyone else's. But then that actually set up his back end to come home really fast as well.
Right.
So that was sort of the bit that I go, well, this is what we could sort of put in, and this is what we can adjust or hopefully make better, which felt like we did. His starts were the best they were, with a few things that we're working on, and then the work remained the same. So he could keep his confidence, keep the same preparation, and make sure that we could just tweak things along the way just to make it that little bit better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's. I think you did the best you could right at that point in time with what you had, and certainly got the result. Look, I believe there were two types of swimmers in the 100 freestyle at before Paris. There were the ones that had speed and knew it and knew that was their strength. They were never going to swim over the top of Chalmers, right, on the second 50. So they had to get out with their speed and hold on and try and improve their second 50 as best they could, knowing that they weren't necessarily going to swim over the top of someone. Then there's the Chalmers of the world, the people that, the David Popovich who know, like, I'm going to get out at a certain speed. I'm probably going to be behind, but I'm going to swim over the top of these people because my strength is the second 50. So to me, there was two camps. You had your front enders and your back enders. Pan's flipped that on its head now. Like, to me, going out in 22.2 and coming back in 24 mid, both of those splits are world class taken alone, but put together, they're on another stratosphere. So how do you approach the 100 freestyle now? First of all, how do we train for the 100 freestyle? And then how do we approach the race now? Because we can either do two things. We can either say, all right, that's the new norm. That's where it's at now, and we've all got to adjust to that. Or we say, that was just an anomaly. That was a one-off. Everyone's going to, come back to the reality of being 47 flat or 46 high. But 46.4 is a whole nother stratosphere, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, in the lead up, the race plan that we were always going with was, his natural race plan is to obviously come home fast. And he's built for those Olympic finals, because very rarely do we see world records in Olympic finals, especially the 100 free. So we were thinking, well, because you got those flyers that go out really fast. And what happens there? Well, there's so much adrenaline. They're in the Olympic final. The pressure's on, and they fly out. Then when they start tightening up, the people that have the back end, they come through, and that's why he's been so successful, because he's so cool, calm, collected under pressure. He just has his first 50 and he's setting it all up. He then just comes off that wall, and he's just always finishing so strong. So the ones that start tightening up, they know he's coming, and so his race model is perfect for that Olympic final. But obviously you have Pan that swam that amazing swim. So he can't help that, but he swam that the way that he did, and other people were tightening up, and then that's how he gets his hand on for silver. So I think, again, you've got to look at the athletes moving forward now. Look at your athletes moving forward, and how do we make that shift to have that fast front end and the fast back end? Is something that, but it only takes for someone to break the ceiling, and then you start seeing people come through and trialing different things. So who knows what will happen, but I guess we'll probably find out in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Talking about the ceiling, let's get back to the 50 then, because that's the one I love the most. And the ceiling itself, the ceiling's 21 flat. That's where we're at right now, right? In the knee suit, right? Like what do they call it these days?
The jammers.
Jammer, yeah, they call it a jammer. That's what the men have, right? The men have the jammer now, and we're at 21 flat. How do we get under that now? Like, what's next? Like, Cam is pushing up on it. Ben's been pushing up on it. We've seen, flashes of possibility. What do you think gets us over the line there?
Well, I feel like we're only so new in this space of going specialized 50s. So I know there's been a few people doing it for a while, but have they tracked to really just specialize in the 50s later on in their career? So if someone decides it much earlier, is that then going to help them? Yes, no, maybe. Like, we've got to wait and see. But it's all the stuff that you're talking about, right? Like the sprint revolution. But we're talking about resistance, more gym training, specialized sets that's more sprint focused. That stuff's going to take a little bit of time in developing these athletes, and then we're going to get the right athletes as well, sort of targeting into those events. So I think because it's so new, I mean, we're going to break 21. We're going to break 21 for sure. But when's that going to happen? Is it going to be soon? Who knows? Is it going to take a certain type of athlete that's going to come through that's just one of the freaks that has always been dulled down in the past? And who knows what will happen? But I think we're just on the right track. Like, we're doing all the right things. People are asking questions. Athletes are changing the way they're training and the focus, and I think it's just going to take a little bit of time, but I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, I think you're right with that assessment too. Absolutely. Do you think what's the word down under? The Australians, are they talking about 50s in LA? Are we going to get them, you think, in the other strokes?
Well, I think if it's going to happen, they've got to do the pre-planning now, and I think they are doing it, because like we've got all our talent ID programs and national flippers. All these things are going to have to start trending towards the 50 as well, putting in the qualifying times that they'll get for certain juniors coming through to start getting access. So I think all those things are happening. And then I think for them to release it all, it's just got to happen with either IOC or World Aquatics have to announce it. I don't know which one has to come first. I think the World Aquatics pushing for it, and the IOC need to make the decision. Like, when do you know when the 800 or the 1500 came in for women for the Olympics? When did they announce that? Was it a year out, 2 years out?
2 years, yeah. I think it was 2 years out. So by our estimations, I'd imagine sometime after Worlds next year, they'd have to make a pretty announcement pretty quickly after that.
Okay, yeah. I think like fingers crossed, it just, if it's happening in every other competition, it'd be great if it happened. It would change athletes' careers. It would keep people in for longer. I think there's a huge benefit. I get that there's only a certain amount of medals at each Olympics, but they keep progressing. Like, I think I don't know. I think it should be. I want it to be in there. I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah, I do too. Well, what was Cam's impact of winning gold in the 50? Like, I know there's probably knowing the Australian coaches and the way that they're built, there's probably some pushback on loving the fact that Cam won that 50, I'd imagine. Is that right?
Yeah, I think just like, it's almost like just good on you, mate. Like, great job. People were laughing at the start when he was only doing X amount. Oh, he's only swimming 3 kilometers a week.
Yeah.
And then in the lead up, I think that's when he qualified for Worlds, when he went 21-2 in the heats at our trials in Melbourne. And then he would even, I was in Saga when we were there for the staging camp for Worlds. And there was a session where he didn't even touch the other end of the pool, in the 50-meter pool, and he was just doing a few 15s, a few 25s, and people were still sort of like having a bit of a laugh. But then he goes and wins Worlds, and it's like, well, that's a gold medal. Like, this guy's changed the game. He's doing what he wanted to do, and going back to what I was sort of talking about, like collaborating with athletes, and they've got ideas, and they know their body. So it's not letting them take over, but it's like, it's having a conversation, because it's, at the end of the day, it's their career. And this is what this guy did. He went back, changed his body shape, seeked out experts, and absolutely changed the game for training. And then look at the results. And now you've got this. I mean, you already had the podcast, but you've added all this stuff in there. You're talking to all these people that are trying different things, and it's just growing the knowledge for every coach, swimmer out there, parent maybe as well, that's sort of taking some of these things on and going, you know what, I want to try some of that. So the game's changed. Like, what about in Australia? We maybe had 1 or 2 every now and then going 21 for a 50 free. Now we've got 5 or 6 people under 22. And like it's all just starting to shift, and we're getting more and more people dropping time, low 22s. So I think it's just, it's progressing. It's progressing fast.
I love it clearly, but I've always been fascinated with who is the fastest swimmer, who's the fastest runner, right? Like the 100 on the track, like that's the one that stops the world, where you want to know who's actually the fastest human on earth. And to me, that's the way I've always felt about the pool, is like who can get from this end to that end as fast as possible. That's where swimming started for me, in the backyard. Like I was racing my brother in my backyard pool of like, hey, I'll race you to the other side. Like that was always the dream to me. I didn't care how many laps we could do. I just wanted to beat the bastard to the other side. And I'm still like that. You know, I'm still trying to figure that out to this day. And I'm glad there are people like you who are on that journey too, mate. So yeah, it's fun. I love it. And
it's cutthroat. It's cutthroat. You can't make any mistakes, right? Like you have to be completely on and get every single thing right to the millimeter, just for you to get a good time, you know, like where, hey, I've done 200 backstroke. I can make a mistake on one turn. But then obviously, no matter what distance you're doing, you're trying to get everything right anyway. But this is just, you can be no mistakes, which is, I like it. It's cutthroat.
Yeah, me too. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you sharing your knowledge today. A lot of people get tons from this, and good catching up with you. And I'm loving your career and what you're doing and how you do. I'm watching from a distance. I'm definitely watching. So know that, and you're doing good stuff. And great to catch up. Let's do it again sometime soon. All right.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks,
and
Ash.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. See you later, mate.
See ya.
Welcome to the Sprint Revolution School. This is the culmination of my life's work. Everything I've learned coaching some of the world's elite athletes, including Cesar Cielo, Fred Busquet, Bruno Fratis, and leading my Auburn team to the NCAA championship in 2009 alongside the legend Richard Quick. Now all of that knowledge is available to you. Our program is structured into easy-to-follow, interactive modules designed to take you from where you are today to becoming the fastest swimmer you've ever been. Check out the link in the description, or simply search The Sprint Revolution on school.com to get started.